All right, it's now 29 minutes to 7 o'clock right here on Morning Express on this 10th day of August 2018. And it's time for us to look at what's making headlines on the dailies. Zinzi Kibiku is going to be introducing the panel that will be discussing this in just a short while. But let's start off with the Standard, where the headline is Bribery Claim as MPs Rescue Rotich and Adan. Now, this is to do with the sugar contraband, sugar that was laced with impurities that has been going on for a while. Remember, the report was prepared by a committee and was to be tabled, but initially it started off on the wrong footing with some of the members of parliament saying that it had been doctored. So that's the headline. Bribery claims as MPs Rescue Rotich and Adan. Zinzi.
Right, thanks, Michael. Let me introduce our panel this morning. Today, closer to me, I have Philip Magal. He is an advocate. On my far left, I have James Mamboleo, a political analyst. Gentlemen, it's always good to have you this Friday morning. Thank you so much for creating time here on KTN News. Page 4 and page 5 of the Standard newspaper this morning. Uhuru orders the arrest of officials who gave out land. We've been seeing demolitions happening across the capital. And also on page 5, still in relation to the same stories, MPs turn heat on state agencies for licenses. Philip, I'd like to begin with you. We've seen now owners of prime land, such as Dakumat UK, move to court saying, listen, NEMA gave us documents, and here they are. And even UK Senator Director Bimal Shah appeared yesterday during the questioning with papers to show NEMA gave me direction to go ahead. What do you make out of this? And does it stand a chance if he goes to court now that he's deciding to move? Does it stand a chance to win? He does have the legal documents.
Yes, of course, it stands a very high chance of winning. He has all the necessary approvals. He owns the land. I mean, it's not his fault that he constructed. He wouldn't have if he wasn't given the approvals. But then the spotlight, as it is right now, and rightly so, is on those agencies. How did they give those approvals?
Right.
I mean, it is their work to provide, like NEMA, it's its work to protect the environment. The water agency, it's its work to provide, to protect the water catchment areas. How do they give those approvals? The spotlight should be on those agencies, not the owners of those buildings. Although I do support the fact that those buildings should come down because of the damage that they are causing. But at the end of the day, those people should be compensated for the losses they might suffer.
Okay, so fine, it's a big win for City Hall, the demolitions that we're seeing happening in Nairobi. But don't you not think the core issue here is actually with NEMA, the state agencies, such as the Water Regulatory Authority? Because what happens is, fine, today 4,000 buildings come down in the next 2 months. Tomorrow, another illegal structure comes up. We are not addressing the key core issue here, which are these agencies that give approval in the first place. And that is why I support the president as well as the DPP's directive that those people should be investigated. Even if they have retired, wherever it is that they are, they must be found. We have signatures on those approvals. We have those the documents that were filed for approvals. We have the procedures that they went through, the people who sat in those committees and who approved those applications. Those people should be found and brought to book. This culture of bribery, this culture of irregularity and failure to follow procedures must be brought to an end if at all we are to avert such crises in the future. Right. Yeah. James Mamboleo, now we're seeing a blame game happening here. We have NEMA saying that they had given, WEMA saying that they had not authorized any building to happen. We've seen the Water Resource Authority saying that they also did not authorize the demolition of the Java House in Kileleshwa. This is a rat race happening. This is a blame game going between the state agencies. This speaks volume, don't you not think so? As a political analyst, something is fishy.
It does, but let's put all these things in context. The first and foremost, the important thing to look at is this. The Republic of Kenya, as constituted, has a number of people, about 45 million of them, who are shareholders of this country, and they run this enterprise through an elected government. Now, there is something that we call the doctrine of eminent domain. The mother title to all the pieces of land, however alienated, that you can see across the Republic of Kenya, belongs to the people of Kenya, right? And riparian reserves are part of that land that belongs to the Republic of Kenya, which should not be given to anyone. So I disagree to some point with my colleague here by first stating very categorically that the process of giving title is as good as the title itself, so that you do not get good title through wrong process. Okay? So any person who sits on riparian reserves has absolutely no title, because no good title existed in the first place. No good title could have been given to him. Now, that means that whoever goes to claim that they have lost anything out of building on road reserves, on riparian reserves, has absolutely no claim, in my view, that they are making, and they should not be entertained. Secondly, now we now need to move to the next limb, which is what he's talking about. The agencies that have been entrusted with the responsibility of giving licenses and permits to people who go for them for land and so on and so forth in this country need to be put to account. Let it go as back as it can go to. Let's look at registrars of lands in various land departments across the country who have colluded with corrupt businessmen, like the people who are now coming to the courts, to give them titles on land that they shouldn't have been given titles for. Let us look at agencies which have the responsibility of safeguarding the environment of this country, like NEMA and the Water Towers Authority, and whoever authorities they have a responsibility to make sure they do not give permits or licenses to people they shouldn't give to. And so, where any of the state officers in any of those parastatals has acted in a manner which is inconsistent with the law, then they should also face the music. And then, most importantly, local authorities, which now manifest themselves as county governments, have also a responsibility to do proper planning and to make sure that they create way for waylifts, for road reserves, for waterways, and so on and so forth. And to the extent that approvals, for instance, have been made through the instrumentation of City Hall, as it then was, for plans to build on riparian reserves, then anyone who was in those offices should also face the music.
Do you think Kenyans who have bought land and built on riparian or road reserves should be compensated? I
don't think so. Let me tell you. And you will never find any common mwananchi having built on any of those riparian reserves. The fellows who build on those riparian reserves are the big fellows who are a part of a culture of impunity, who think that, you know, all you need to do is get some cash in your pocket and you will line the pockets of government officers and they will give you those permits. And they never expected that a day would come when government would insist on demolishing those buildings.
But what happens if I've done my homework? I go to the lands registrar, I go to NEM, and I find out that this land is okay, and I even have the documents to prove that it's fine. I have done my due process. Where is that detachment?
Let me tell you how it happens, because it doesn't happen like that. In most cases, fellows like this, who of course profile some of these pieces of land as being extremely prime, will go around and look at some of these lands and then approach lands officials and tell them, you know, I've seen a piece of land here where I can do some business. In cahoots with the relevant agencies at the city, county government, and all the other agencies. I mean, money is normally spent so that all these guys look the other side. And where a permission to build would not have been granted, it is granted. In most cases, it is actually supplier-driven demand. It is the developers themselves who first approach government officials. It is not the other way around.
What would you tell worried Kenyans right now who genuinely want to buy land for business? Kenyans then right now would be very skeptical, very afraid to buy land.
What I would tell Kenyans right now is that they should go through the proper process of doing due diligence for any land they buy. And this is what due diligence involves. Get a lawyer who will go to the lands office and get for you what is called a search, you know, which indicates for which you pay, you know. Don't go there and tell someone who works at the lands office that please tell me whether this land is okay or not. Get the proper documentation for whoever is selling land to you. If they are a company, get their registration document and make sure that in actual fact at the company's registry they are properly registered and incorporated as a company. That the directors who are claiming to sell that land to you are actually the directors of that company. For individuals, make sure they give you their identification documents, be it an identity card or a passport. And this is what you simply do. Approach a lawyer or go by yourself and pay for a search for any piece of land at any land registry. Once you get that search, then you compare it with the documents that you have been given. Now, there is another due diligence part which most Kenyans do not do. Get a surveyor to actually tell you that the piece of land for which you have done as such sits in some specific location actually on the ground. Because many Kenyans have bought land that is actually on paper which does not exist in actual fact. So they will also tell you that, you know, this piece of land is part of those pieces of land that have been mentioned, for instance, in the Ndungu report. This piece of land sits on our riparian reserve. Okay. This is a whale for our high voltage electricity or whatever it is. And once you have that, there is a provision at law that if you buy land after having done such kind of due diligence and you build on it, and later it turns out that, you know, this was land which would otherwise not be land alienable to you, then you can sue the government for leading you up the wrong path, and you can get compensation for that.
And that is exactly where I left off, isn't it? You cannot separate the government from the title deeds out there. You cannot separate the government from the approvals by NEMA. You cannot separate the government from the approvals by the water authority, okay? You are a Kenyan, for heaven's sake. There you go, you've done your search, you've been given a title deed, you've been given approval by NEMA, you've been given approval by all the relevant authorities to construct. And let us not generalize. Of course, there are the big fishes who subvert the law.
So, Philip, as an advocate, as a lawyer, what would you tell a Kenyan who is found themselves in the middle of all this? E.g., I bought perhaps an entire floor at South End Mall, or I bought a house in this specific apartment that is said to be demolished. Yes. As a Kenyan, not even the person who built and bought the land, but the person who bought it from a third party. Where do I begin?
You did buy it on the strength of a title which you are shown, on a strength of a title upon which you did conduct due diligence, made sure that it was registered in the proprietor. That is why we have what we call the sanctity of title. Once a government issues a title, then it cannot go back on its own word. And that is why I emphasize that all those people have a right to compensation. Look at all the third parties affected. Not even a person who bought that particular, but person who had a business there with proper goodwill. Where is that person to go? Is it just to be cast out with the rest? That person has a right to compensation, and against the government, and more specifically those authorities.
And exactly who now compensates the third party? Is it the person I originally bought the land or apartment from, or the government in this scenario?
In this case, then he will have to sue the person. If he has a title, then it is against the government. But if he was only renting, then it is against the individual who had rented out the premises to him. But that other individual as well has a right against the government.
To sue the government.
Yes.
Okay,
we cannot have a government that is in shambles, that is holding us responsible for its own omissions.
All right, so James, DPP Nordin Haji has said that they want, they will be looking and investigating individuals in these state agencies, the likes of NEMA and the Water Regulatory Authority. Do you think that the DPP will come out empty-handed? Because again, as much as we are demolishing buildings, if we do not solve the core issue, which are individuals in these state agencies, tomorrow we'll be back at this again.
Let me speak on behalf of the many practicing advocates in this country who have had the opportunity of engaging with some of these agencies from time to time. And let me speak for Kenyans who, on a daily basis, walk into the offices of these agencies to look for services and say as follows, you know, the state of public service, the values of the public service as stipulated under Article 232 of the Constitution have been thrown completely out of the window. The national values and principles of governance as stipulated under Article 10 of this Constitution have been thrown completely out of the window. Look at Chapter 6 of the Constitution. It simply is not sitting in the minds of most of the people who have been appointed, unfortunately, to run the affairs of the agencies that we have spoken about.
Right.
And I think if the DPP were to commission an investigation, a good investigation into the activities of any of these agencies, he will probably find culpable almost everyone working in those agencies, right from the board to the CEO to the rest of the staff, even clerks and drivers. Because what these people have done out of a culture of impunity is developed a need, such a need for corruption, that every time you walk in, they see you as a potential customer for the side money that you can give to take a certain shortcut, as opposed to a Kenyan who has come to actually get service. And you will see that in most cases, the files of people coming to apply for any of these permits or licenses normally, without influencing these people one way or the other, will always sit there several weeks, months later. Something for which you should have gotten a service for 2 days or within 1 week will take you months, because they want to deal with those people who are paying. So first and foremost, the president and the government in general has a responsibility to clamp down on these people. Where they find that some of these people have acted irregularly or in contravention of existing laws, they should be fired. And then once they're fired, we can always deal with the other questions, including the criminal process, which Nuruddin Haji is going to undertake. And then secondly, I think this should be a continuous process. This fight against corruption should be a continuous process. The president has expressed himself extremely clearly this time around. We don't expect this to be a few months affair so that, you know, the government looks good about it. We expect the president to keep at it. Let the president make sure he puts off his phone, so that some of these fellows will not call him.
Right.
So that no one who's probably perceived to have committed some criminal or corruption act does not reach him, so that this message is sent to Kenyans across the country. When you get a public position, it's a position that you should use for the greater good of the public of Kenya.
Michael, what else has gotten your attention?
All right, and well, the standard is loaded with quite a lot, and just a follow-up to what you're discussing, structures that are lined up for demolition. We've got hotels, malls, temples, private residences targeted in Nairobi. So well, let's wait and see how that is going to go about. But just like from the discussion you've had, we are likely to see quite a number of lawsuits coming out. UK owner has filed a suit to block demolition. That's on page 5 of the Standard. But because of time, let's now take a look at the Daily Nation. And the headline is Sugar Members of Parliament's vote to save Adan and Rotich. But we're going to discuss that as we review the week. But I'd like us to look at page 2. Which is in line with basically what you've been discussing in terms of following things through to the end. And this is farewell to 10 pupils in fatal crash. They were destined for big things. But this is not the first time that we've had a road accident claim the lives of young Kenyans, claim the lives of, or snatch the life of Kenyans prematurely. But the danger is sometimes this is a sad occasion that comes and literally just goes like that without making resolve or trying to solve the actual problem. Now, there are issues, of course, regarding transport, for students who are going from one place to another. But the question is why this particular vehicle was out at that time, whereas there is a law that has been put in place during travel times. But maybe looking at it from a wider scope, let me start with you, Philip.
Yes.
The aspect of following things through to the end in what really caused this crash, and their lives should not go down, and then we forget that.
I think our traffic rules are really require major overhaul, yeah? Because let's say an individual causes an accident today, tomorrow he'll be back on the road with this license. And that is the problem. We should have a system whereby licenses can be withdrawn. A driving license can be withdrawn. If somebody is caught drunk driving, it is automatic that his license should be suspended for some time. After that, again, there is penalties. He should be arraigned in court and charged. And the most ridiculous part is the sentences that are attendant to this kind of criminal activities. 6 months for causing death. 1 year for causing death. For heaven's sake, this driver has been sentenced for 6 years for killing 10 people out of recklessness or negligence on his part. We should have stiffer penalties. Causing death should attract similar sentences to murder or manslaughter. That is what is happening in the rest of the world. Drunk driving, basically you are looking to cause an accident. We should have custodial sentences for that. We should have licenses suspended. You cause an accident once, whether it is that you scratch another person's car, whether it is that you've knocked down a pedestrian, you should never have the right to drive a car on the roads again, or that your right should be suspended for 2-3 years. Today, here in Kenya, you kill a man on the road, you are given a fine of 50,000. Tomorrow, you're back on the road, you kill another 10, you are given a sentence of 1 year, you serve it, you come back, you're back on the road. How then are we supposed to address this? I think it is lack of innovation on our part. I think it is a high time we realize that most deaths, most injuries are caused on our roads. Now we have much expansive road network. We have more vehicles on our roads, and it is a high time that we focused on our traffic rules and made them more stringent to make sure that we protect the citizens.
Right. James Bamboleo, a survey was done not too long ago,
yes,
and it revealed that 80% of the accidents that happen on our roads are actually down to human error.
Yes.
Not so much design of the road and the fact there's a time we used to blame potholes. That seems to be a thing of the past, but human error is the issue. Yet, we have so many, if you drive from here, say for instance, from here to Kisumu, you'll probably have maybe what, 6, 7 police stops. What exactly are those traffic police doing there? What are we doing? And if it's down to human error, it just means we're just careless drivers.
It just means we are just careless. Mike, you only need to drive on the Athi River-Namanga Road on your way to Tanzania through Arusha. And on the Kenyan border, on the Kenyan side of that road, you can do up to 200, 250 kilometers per hour, depending on which car you're driving. Now, immediately you get into Tanzania. From Namanga to Arusha is almost the same distance as from Athi River to Namanga. Now, the distance between Athi River and Namanga you can do within 1 hour. The distance between Namanga and Arusha you will do something between 2 and 2.5 hours. Why? Because of enforcement of traffic regulations. On the Tanzanian side, nobody is going to allow you to do beyond 50 if on that section of the road you're supposed to do 50 kilometers per hour. If it is 100, it is 100, strictly. And there are enforcement officers on the road who are going to make sure that if you are caught breaching that regulation, then you are in it for it. You are in for it. So I do not see our situation as coming out of lack of laws. The regulations are enough. You can see signs on the road saying children crossing, cows crossing, or whatever it is. It boils down to the culture of impunity that we have inculcated in ourselves as Kenyans. We have decided that we are not going to obey any laws anyway. Something like driving, which is supposed to be regulated predominantly by the sense of reason of the driver himself, has been left to people who take cars and they want to do with them anything they please. They don't care whether they are driving through a very crowded neighborhood. They don't care whether they are driving at points where they are likely to encounter animals and so on and so forth. So this is what I will say for purposes of making it quick. The first cue to the carnage that we are seeing on the roads is going to be the inculcation in our drivers, a sense of self-responsibility over the machines that they take to drive. Because those things are good, they serve the purpose of conveying us from one point to another, but they can also be the instruments of death. And so drivers right from training need to know that this is not a license to entertain yourself on the road. It is a license to carry yourself, and you know that this road is not used only by you. You must use it in ways which will protect yourself and the lives of others. But most importantly, we also need to get our laws enforced. You will realize that probably there are about 20 roadblocks from here to Kisumu, and none of them are going to catch any fault vehicle. They are not going to find any driver who does not have a license, or the license is not renewed. They are not simply going to do anything. Or if they find out some fault with the driver or the vehicle, they're going to take a bribe and they will flag them to go by. So we need this corruption clamp that we are seeing right from the national level. We need it to go to the police. We need the Inspector General together with the traffic commandant to tell the officers that, you know, guys, right now, if something like this happens and this guy had bypassed a police roadblock, and you know it's night, we know we have rules about school transport, and then a driver of a school bus full of pupils passes through that place and they go and get an accident, you're also going to be in trouble.
All right.
That way people will take responsibility.